that the workshops organised this weekend have contributed to improving the content and focus of our debates. On my behalf and on behalf of you all, I wish to thank the moderators, rapporteurs, various people who made contributions, and the staff involved in the background who helped to make this all happen. The main focus of our last session was the preparation of the forthcoming European Defence Council in December of this year. The roadmap to the Council is set out in the European Council conclusions of December 2012 is clear, and we have heard from Minister Shatter and the EEAS in this regard. As part of these preparations, this issue featured on the agenda for the meeting of Defence Policy Directors in January and the informal meeting of Ministers of Defence in February, hosted by the Irish Presidency, during which there was a specific focus and detailed discussion on enhancing the development of defence capabilities in the EU. One of the three clusters of activity identified by the European Council, and within this the concept of pooling and sharing of defence capabilities. The current and next presidency will continue to prepare the work of the Council through the informal phase, which...
Could the interpreters point out that we cannot keep up with this speed? Could the speaker be impressed upon to slow down, please?
Global strategy for strengthening Europe's defence industry in this regard, which is due next month. The informal phase, as we have heard, will allow the EEAS to explore with Member States which topics and priorities should be addressed as part of European Council debate, while the formal phase will be based on the reports and analysis published and on the table for consideration and debate. In relation to the overall process, I note the Ministers and the various defence agencies have had and will continue to have many opportunities to discuss these important issues. That is one of the reasons why conferences such as this are so important. The conferences allow parliamentarians, both at European and national level, to have further, more considered and more coherent input into and influence on the preparation of these policies, on the work of the Council in December, and as a general means of improving parliamentary oversight of policy formulation in the CFSP and CSDP arena. Thank you for your contributions and for your attention.
Well, thank you very much indeed, David, and I was delighted to work with you over the last few days on this conference. Can I suppose, first of all, also, dear guests, colleagues, friends from all over Europe, I just want to thank you all for your very thoughtful contributions over the last 2 interesting days of work, and for your help in drafting the conclusions at this conference. I think it shows the interest that you have in this conference. These conclusions, which give an important voice on the wider stage to the conference and to us as parliamentarians working together, will be sent to the speakers of the national parliaments, to the President of the European Parliament, the European Council, and of the Commission, and of course to the High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy for their information and of course for further consideration. Colleagues and friends, in my opening remarks yesterday evening, I referred to the importance of and the need for parliamentary oversight for the new structures and the policy instruments under the Union's CFSP and the CSDP. And I also spoke of the need to optimise the opportunities for dialogue and cooperation, together with a view ultimately to be influencing and improving the Union's common foreign security and defence policies. I believe our work over the last 2 days has been very evident of that. Like my colleague David Staunton, I welcome the presentations of the Commissioner on working for peace, security and development in Africa, and our 2 Irish ministers in relation to the Middle East peace process and the European Defence Council 2013. I hope that progress can be made in all these very difficult policy areas, where ultimately the cost of failure of effective action are high in terms of lives lost and the creation of further humanitarian crisis. I also welcome the experimental format for this conference in terms of the use of the breakout sessions, which we are pioneering here in Ireland, and which I believe have allowed colleagues to focus more carefully on policy areas of particular interest to them. Conferences such as this, which occur every 6 months, I believe represent rare opportunities to work together intensively and to give our collective views on these very important policy areas. I would like to extend a special word of thanks to our moderators and our rapporteurs for the difficult but very stimulating task they undertook on behalf of all of us as parliamentarians here. You all delivered excellent work for us, and that I'm sure it will give good food for thought as though we want to consider ways to improve the parliamentary oversight of policy formulation of the CFSP and the CSDP arena. Colleagues, great strides are being taken at EU level on your behalf, and I commend the hard work that is being done, notably to ensure peace in Mali through the various programmes there, to ensure increased stability in the Horn of Africa and Somalia, and in particular to the EU training mission led, as it happens, by Brigadier General Gerard Ahern of the Irish Defence Forces. The work being done to revive the Middle East peace process and to develop improved conflict prevention measures, and of course, finally to prepare as carefully as possible the path to an important European Council on Defence later on this year. The range of activities under review by parliamentarians is wide and is actually growing wider. And I am very pleased also, therefore, that we have agreed on a process to review the organisation of the CFSP, the CSDP conference, which will lead to final decisions of the conference speakers in Rome in 2015. The next CFSP-CSDP meeting will be held in Vilnius under the Lithuanian presidency, and it will be my great pleasure to hand the torch of parliamentary oversight to our Lithuanian colleagues to carry out this important work. And before I finish the meeting this evening, I'll be asking my colleague, the Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, to say a few words after we have the conclusions. Okay, and the Lithuanian delegation, we're here in strength, and we're delighted to have the delegation here under the chairmanship of Benedictus Juoduka. So we now move to the adoption of the conference conclusions. But before I move to the adoption of the conference conclusions, we have here a request from a number of parliamentarians that the following agenda be included on the agenda for the next interparliamentary conference meeting of the CFSP and CSDP, namely entitled the European Union and Arms Experts. It's been signed here by a number of parliamentarians, and maybe could I get one of the parliamentarians to propose that here this afternoon? Okay, Deputy Sean Crowe. Okay, who signed this request? Maybe when the chairman of the Lithuanian delegation is commenting later on, he might just comment on that request from those parliamentarians. Or I'll ask him maybe to consider that afterwards when we're finished the conclusions. Okay. So we'll now, I now wish to proceed with the draft conclusions of the conference. I would also like to correct an error in the text of the paragraph 41 for those of you that have the script in front of you there. The last sentence in that paragraph should read, welcomes also the important contribution being made by the European Commission's task force. That was a typographical error, and it now has been adjusted and has been corrected. Okay, so we'll now move on to the considerations. I have them here. Okay, to the amendments. And I'm going to take the amendments in sequence. I think all of you have have a copy of those amendments there. So it's amendments 1, 3 and 4. Amendments 1 and 4 are related proposals. Amendments 3 and 4 are alternatives. So I suggest that we debate them together. Does Mr. Flount wish to move the amendment 1? Yeah. Okay, you wish to speak briefly on that, Mr. Flount?
No, Mr. Chairman, shortly, because Mr. Flau already had to leave back to Belgium. No, it's just to make it very clear that the ad hoc committee is temporary, so it's 2 times the same proposal to add temporary to the ad hoc review committee.
Okay, is that amendment agreed? Agreed, okay. Sorry, there is somebody here down there who wishes to comment before we agree. Okay, down, my colleague from Italy. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The delegation asks for the withdrawal of these proposed amendments because, of course, it's all intended that everything is temporary. In the document, we all know that the AHRC ceases to exist on the conclusion of the Interparliamentary Conference presided over by the Greek presidency. So obviously, the whole thing is temporary, and repeating it would make it even weaker.
Okay, this is my colleague down on the extreme right of me there wishes to comment as well. Sweden. Okay.
Thank you. Well, first, at the principal level, first, I think it's been a very good conference. I think that it's very good that we have this opportunity to share views and positions, and the workshops have been very good. But we are from different traditions, different parties, different European party families. And therefore I must say, for me it's very hard to say yes or no to a thing that's been delivered to me 2 hours before. I'm from a tradition where democracy is time, and therefore it is very hard for me to take decision. And I have personally no mandate from my committee or my parliament to say yes or no to them. So I think that the notes to paragraph 21A is very good because they are saying what we have discussed and what we are doing, but it's very tough for me to take decision on the conclusions. Thank you.
Okay, my colleague from Germany wishes. Okay, just after my colleague from Germany. Okay.
Ja, ich möchte dem Kollegen aus Schweden.
I'd like to expressly support my colleague from Sweden. We have a problem. The first one is that we've got the conclusions, but meanwhile there are things in there but we hadn't already had the debate and we hadn't already heard from the minister, so that's rather strange. And also, in terms of the content, I think a certain critique could be made. I was in Working Group 2, just to pick up one point. Israel is strongly criticized because of its settlement policy and also the inability of the European Union and the lack of courage of the European Union in Middle East policy was expressed in the working group, but it's not reflected here at all. And then we have this problem in Cyprus. There are amendments being proposed. We can't vote on it because it's supposed to be consensus. And again, I'm rather keen to see how this consensus will be established. So I would very much request that the working group to be set up, but where there was some controversy, should look at this whole issue of amendments. Because we're talking about consensus, whereas in some cases there was no consensus. In fact, there was in some cases conflict.
Okay, my colleague from the European Parliament wants to make a point of order.
Yes, Mr. President, what I want to comment is almost a point of order. I think for the future we should try to develop a procedure which is a more parliamentary procedure. I mean, well, we have the papers with more time, where the amendments can be tabled with time again to reflect about, and where probably the document that we approve is a much shorter one. Now, concerning this paper, I want to say, first of all, I think the paper is very well done. There is a serious effort here to produce a paper that would not be controversial, but we have all to be realistic on what is the force of this paper. This is not a paper that is going to be read by millions and millions of people. This is a paper which is reflecting what we have been discussing here. Now, what I believe, that will be my last comment, is that this is a paper basically a consensus paper. So I think on any word of the paper where there is opposition by some, this word disappears. And on any amendment where there is not general consensus, the amendment is rejected. It's not a point of majority, minority. This is a paper which, if we want to have it adopted under consensus, one has to see. But this, as soon as there is somebody or a couple of delegations or 3 delegations who disagree on Amendment 3 or 7 or 12, the amendment disappears. And on any issue that anybody raises of the text and says, look, we disagree on that sentence, otherwise we may be here until midnight and even 2 months discussing in a parliamentarian way the content of the text, which is solid and which I believe may be useful if we take it as I am announcing. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Understand that as a contribution to make things work in a most fluent way.
I think it's a very practical and a very constructive remarks you've made there in relation to that. Now, there's my colleague down here from I think from the UK wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. And can I just take this opportunity to say it's been a great conference and all the innovations that you've made in terms of your chairmanship and that of your colleagues has been excellent. What I want to say is that I think this paper, I have every sympathy with having a record of what we've discussed and what people said. I think that's very useful. But once we get to the area which says conclusions, then like my Swedish colleague, I have a complete problem over it, and I have no mandate to agree anything in terms of my own committee, and I think it is just not useful to have conclusions. So I think, and this is certainly the view of my House of Commons colleagues as well, and I think the document should just end at when we get to conclusions. It's just a record of what we do. As the European parliamentarian said, Mr. Martinez, I don't think huge numbers of people are going to read this, and I think it would just be better if we had a record and we said we had a good meeting and we left it at that.
Okay, Deputy Bernard Durkin.
Chairman, very quickly,
Parliament.
I would agree with our colleague from the European Parliament in the sense that I believe, and in this sense I disagree with our UK colleague, I believe that when we have a conference and we have a debate, there must be some conclusions. Otherwise, there's no sense in being here at all. Otherwise, we're only a talking shop. So we must reach some conclusions that mean something. And in response to the First Amendment, I would agree that the amendment should be deleted. The proposed amendment should be deleted and the text left as it is. For the simple reason is that a thorough reading of the lines in the framework of the parliamentary dimension of Ireland's presidency of the Council or the European Union, it's already stated. There's no need to put in temporary or otherwise. It's already there. It's in the particular context. So I would agree with the idea to remove the amendment and to reach the conclusion. It reflects what was discussed and the conclusions that were arrived at.
Thank you very much indeed. Does anybody else wish to? Oh yes, lady down there on from Italy, I think. Is that right? Okay, thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We do adhere to the former speaker idea and to the sensible approach that has been shown by our colleague Miguel Ángel Martínez. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. You have to bear in mind as well, of course, conclusions you can't include everything that was discussed throughout the 2 days. Otherwise, you'd have a document going, you'd have our photocopier in there, you'd want about 5 photocopiers in there. So they are really a summary. And, the other thing you have to bear in mind as well is that they're not binding. That's the most important thing in relation to the whole thing. But as Deputy Durkin from the Irish Parliament said, yes, we have to have some conclusion. So I'm going to go back to my Belgian colleagues here and ask them to know, do they want to withdraw that amendment?
Mr. Chairman, no, I don't have a mandate to withdraw this amendment from my parliament. And for us, for our president and for our speaker, and from the mandate I have from my parliament, I would like that the amendment will be approved, because for us, the temporary kind of it is for us essential that. But for us there was a link, and for our speaker there was a link that we agreed that Italy was included in the process, but for us it's very important that for us it's a kind of a deal that is also temporary, and we really want to stress it for the Belgian National Parliament. It's very important to stress it again.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I could debate this all evening over and back, but I'm going to have to take a consensus from the delegates here in the room this evening in relation to this amendments 1 and 4. So maybe a show of hands in favour of putting in the amendment. In favour of the amendment, sorry. So I don't think there's a consensus. I don't think that. Okay. Against. So.
There's no voting makers.
No. Yeah. From up here, it looks very even. I want to be fair and balanced, and as a chairman, and again. Maybe could I go? If there isn't a consensus, I think we should just leave it as it is. Okay. Is withdrawn. Okay. Thank you. So amendments 1 and 4 are withdrawn. Okay. Okay. We're going to amendment. Okay, amendment 3 here from the Netherlands. And does Ms. Einchik wish to move amendment 3? Ms. Einchik, do you want to move amendment 3? Or withdraw?
No, sir. I really would like to discuss this because, once again, I don't want to make a big matter of thanks for all the information we got, but it's again in line with what we discussed. And in Appendix 1 is about the ad hoc commission. And then again, it's stated that, especially through the mechanism of the ad hoc review committee, that means that it's a longer term than we actually discussed. And I don't want to make troubles in anything what we discussed, but we had a head of delegation discussion. So I really don't know why this is in this 26th amendment. So please, to be discussed.
So you're moving the amendment. Okay. Okay. Is there anybody else wishing to speak on this amendment? Nobody else wishes to speak on it? So the amendment is agreed. Okay.
Amendment 2.
Okay, we're now going to amendment 2, which is moved by Ms. O'Sullivan of the Irish Parliament. Does Mrs. O'Sullivan wish to comment if we move this amendment? Okay, she just wants to move the amendment. Is this amendment 2 agreed? It's agreed. Okay, it's consensus there. We'll now move to Amendment 5 in paragraph 30. Does Ms. Einzig wish to move that Amendment 5?
Withdraw.
Withdraw.
Thank you very
much indeed. Okay, we now go to Amendment 6, paragraph 41. Again, we have the same parliamentarian, Ms. Einzig. Does she wish to move Amendment 6?
Excuse me, Chair. I would really like to try at least to talk about the capacities, because it's good to just mention, because I know that in Vilnius, as discussed already, there's going to be a working group on EU and NATO. So it's going to be very interesting if we're going to have this already in the conclusions today. The Dutch delegation would very much appreciate this, if you could conclude it.
Okay, sorry. Yes.
I'm sorry we can't include a reference to the NATO response force. I mean, the format of our Interparliamentary Assembly does not fit with the NATO structures. So, yeah, so NATO is not relevant here for us.
Okay, but back to my Dutch colleague again.
Excuse me, sir. I will be very pleased if EU battle group would be in it then. Okay. Just withdraw NATO, EU battle groups, that's fine. That's fine with us. Thanks a lot. So
you just would want to withdraw the NATO part of the amendment?
Yes.
The rest stands. Okay. Is that agreed by the delegates? Okay. Thank you very much indeed. And now we're going to Amendment 7. This has been proposed by two delegates. It's in paragraph 44. It's a new paragraph, so I call on Mr. Fromion to move the amendment as his name appears first on the list of participants.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. Of course, I will defend this amendment. I'd like to make a slight correction, however. I'd like to get rid of the end of the first sentence. When it says concerning the CSDP, I would like to remove in their law or in their national policies. Well, I mean, that's not our competence, and that's a mistake we made in submitting the amendments. So sorry about that. So having said that, yes, I would like to move this amendment. I think it would be interesting for the national parliaments that we represent. It would be interesting for them to have a control over why CSDP is not fully operational. For example, standing structural cooperation in paragraph 42, Article 6, Article 42, paragraph 6 of the treaty. Same thing for the battle groups, which are costing a lot of money and not costing anything. Then you have record, which is staff of many hundreds of officers doing nothing. So we need to know why these things are not operating correctly. And since we represent the national parliaments of the countries who have accepted this treaty, I think it's only legitimate, as I said earlier, that we should take an interest in this issue with a view possibly to making proposals for the European Council in December. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So, do you want to move the amendment that has been amended? Is that agreed? Agreed by everybody? Okay. Thank you very, very much indeed. Okay, colleagues, fellow parliamentarians, may I take it that the draft conclusions are adopted as the conclusions as amended, as the conclusions of this conference. So in accordance with the rules of procedure, the final text of the conclusions will be communicated as soon as possible to all delegations, to the President of the National Parliaments and to the European Parliament, to the President of the European Council and to the Commission and to the High Representative of Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. So colleagues, I just now want to call on my esteemed colleague, the Chairman of the Foreign Affairs and Committee of the Lithuanian Parliament, who will be hosting the next conference in Vilnius. I think it's on the 4th to the 6th of September next. And that's Mr. Benedictus Juoka to say a few words here. And I'd also ask him maybe to deal with the request from the number of parliamentarians in relation to the arms exports in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear chairpersons, ladies and gentlemen. Our conference is coming to the end. I think you will agree it's the right time to organize this for a very well done job. Especially I would like to thank two chairmen of two committees, Mr. Breen and Mr. Stanton, for nice organized conference. It's not strange. It's really, ladies and gentlemen, we had very good time. I think that topics, absolutely interesting topics for the discussions. We had so many discutants, so we had excellent speakers. I'm not talking about excellent food and very good wine. I believe we could possibly to taste this evening even better. So thank you very much for everything. I am not surprised that they made our Irish parliamentarians excellent job, because they are chairing European Union Council 7th time. Of course, this is great experience. As you know, Lithuania will chair after exactly 3 months since 1st of July, only for the first time. Of course, we have to learn much from you, and of course we will do. I think we will try to organize also very good our meetings. But I would like to remind dear colleagues that our two committees, Committee of Foreign Affairs and Committee of Security and Defense, we are planning to organize 2 conferences. One, it will be at the beginning of September. It will be absolutely the same topic, is about common foreign and security policy. And I would like to thank parliamentarians who sent for us some concrete recommendations to include concrete topics in our program. So thank you very much. So another conference, it will be at the end of September during our Eastern Partnership Summit. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege and a pleasure for me to invite you to come to Vilnius. Mr. Breen, our boss here, asked me, what about weather in Vilnius at that time, at September? I said, okay, it's very difficult to predict, but you will see in these labels, Lithuania. In Lithuanian, we are calling Lietuva. Lietus in Lithuania, it means rain. So, Mr. Breen, we always have rain, so please take umbrella. But you know, just I would like to point one strange thing, because it happened. The last 12 years I was rector of Vilnius University. Vilnius University is the oldest university in Eastern Europe that was founded in the 16th century, but keep in mind, Jesuits founded Vilnius University. And today, Pope in Vatican is also Jesuit. So I still have relations with Vilnius University, and we have St. John Church. So I will try to communicate with God. And for sure, I will order the good weather for that minute. See you in Vilnius, ladies and gentlemen.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we could have Pope Francis as one of our workshops. So, can I, first of all, that I suppose brings our conference to an end, the second meeting of the Interparliamentary Conference on Foreign Policy and Security. Could I, on behalf of my colleague, Deputy David Staunton, and the Irish Presidency, thank you very much for your participation, and I wish you well. Seeing that the chairman of the Lithuanian committee made a bite about his own country, I would like to tell you also that we're hosting a little event this year called The Gathering, in which we're inviting people from all over the world to come to every corner of Ireland, because every community is involved in some type of a festival or an event. And we'd love to see you back here again with your families sometime during the year to hopefully experience the same hospitality and experience our culture that you've experienced here in Dublin. Ireland might be a small country, but it has a lot of counties, and we'd love you to visit some of them, maybe in the West Coast as well. So we look forward to the conference in Vilnius in September, and of course we wish our friends in Lithuania every success with their preparation. Just a few housekeeping matters before we finish. The buses will depart for your hotels in 5 minutes. The staff will direct you to them just outside the door. We look forward to meeting you at dinner this evening at the Mansion House, which is the seat of the Lord Mayor of Dublin, where we promise, Deputy Staunton and myself promise to have a very good night for you of entertainment and food once again. And just for matters, buses will leave the hotels at 8 p.m. sharp for the Mansion House. And for those who cannot join us, may I thank you very much, and I wish you well in your journey home. Bon voyage, and look forward to seeing you all again in September in the near future. Thank you very much indeed.
lifetime limit. Now, my understanding from this section, it was to encourage farmers to move their farms on to younger farmers, as I understand. So I think it's been, it's not a question of a subsidy here again or a tax break, but really an encouragement in terms of economic activity and viability of the agricultural use of the land.
Senator Barrett, do you want to reply?
But I think the downside on the Minister is that all of those tax breaks are capitalised in higher land prices. So, you know, we were speaking earlier on it that one of the differences between Ireland and New Zealand is that New Zealand pulled all these subsidies and grants as the price of land fell, new people entered agriculture. We're making land more expensive, and therefore people can't get into it. And that's part of the row that Minister Coveney is having to cope with the level of subsidies attached to agriculture in Ireland, which are not related to production. And it does refer to more than agriculture, as you say. But to have 3 million worth of assets to dispose of is an achievement in itself. And how they managed to get the tax break, I understand it. But I think what this whole session shows, I think, Minister, is that in future editions of the Finance Bill, we'll have to have the arguments made in full detail before we get them, because while these sessions are most useful, it would be beneficial if we were able to see in a measured way, are these particularly deserving cases given all that's going on in the country? And I won't press the recommendation, and I think section 48 is along the same lines. But how some people get the right to give to dispose of 3 million worth of assets free of capital gains tax, when we're pursuing people way down the line for much with much smaller incomes for much heavier burdens, I think it indicates the Finance Bill has to be taken in a wider context in future times. Thank you.
Context is, Senator, we are encouraging people of an age who want to transfer their business on to a younger member of their family, to do it in a way which encourages additional economic activity. I heard what he said earlier, that this may well be a means of inflating land prices. All of the evidence suggests that, yes, land prices are on the way up again. Agricultural land, not down to this, I respectfully suggest, but rather down to the fact that the agri-foods area has seen a substantial growth in recent years. There's a huge demand for produce, and we're seeing this growth around the country. In response to that, if ever there was a market governed by the principles that Senator Barrett wants it to be governed by, it probably is in this area. And I have noticed an increase in land prices, but largely down to this substantial improvement in the agri-foods sector, which is encouraging more and more people to go back on the land and to do it in the most efficient way possible. Now, I have to say here, I'm not an expert in this area, but I do think this was a position we took up in the previous budget of trying to encourage the timely handover of an asset such as this as a means of encouraging younger people in that farming family or elsewhere to move this asset forward. And I think the case has been quite successful thus far.
Senator Darragh. Very quickly, in response to Senator Barrett also, without the benefit of this, Senator, the reality is that if somebody had the property transferred, the business transferred, they would also end up having to pay large duties, debts. So instead of investing in the future and expanding their premises, their business, they'd end up paying off monies to the state. So that would be a decreasing spiral downwards rather than the benefit of giving the tax break for the younger farmer, younger trained farmer also. And that's the reason, and the primary reason why that's been in place for a long number of years, and that's why the Irish agri-food sector is striving towards the Food 2020 targets, which is a doubling in certain areas. If they were spending money and paying transfer duties, well, that certainly wouldn't happen under any circumstances.
Senator Barrett, do you want to reply?
Just to conclude, I think that the the elderly 66-year-olds concerned should have a better view of the future generation than to require a 3 million tax-free exemption to pass on businesses to their offspring. But look, I thank Senator Darcy as always and the Minister, but it strikes me as something that we do really need to consider, how some people manage to get these concessions. Is there any production anyway? Why does he hate the next generation so much that he won't hand over unless he gets a 3 million a tax exemption for it? And do we need that kind of person there? But look, I've been very well facilitated, and I thank the senators opposite and the Minister for it. But I won't be moving the recommendation.
Senator O'Clarty.
Just a short word of support for Senator Barrett. I think the argument he's raising is very valid. And I think it should be taken into consideration. I know that we've certainly seen in other places in the finance bill that people from a lower people on a lower means are actually being fairly targeted for tax to be taken from them. But this really is a section that is, there is leeway there for people who would be a little bit better off to be able to pay a little bit more. And I think his suggestion is valid, and it should have been taken on board.
Minister.
As I said earlier, this is a means of encouraging the transfer of productive land to a younger generation. It's not a question of hating the younger generation. On the contrary, it's a question of encouraging them, cherishing the younger generation to move on their assets. Land can often be a difficult thing to move on, as the Senator is aware, and there's no reason to believe that by doing this it will infuse a new opportunity that presently exists in terms of the agri-foods area. So we think this is a targeted measure, and some suggestion of being some subsidy towards it. We don't accept that. This, from my understanding of the area, has led to transfers, and I would respectfully suggest that has to be in the interest of the industry as a whole.
Thank you, Minister. That's section 47, stand part bill. Is that agreed? Section 48. Section is opposed by Senator Barrett. Senator Barrett.
Well, I don't wish to. It is the same kind of amendment, just reading from the explanatory memorandum. The new section gives effect to relief from capital gains tax. First, Tagus has certified that the sale and purchase or an exchange of agricultural land was made for farm restructuring purposes, and full relief from capital gains will be given. Again, and this is not the 66-year-old, it's a more general application. Land prices are booming. This should be a source of income for the Exchequer, not a source of giving away tax-free capital gains. We have had a very severe law for a lot of people in this country as we necessarily restructure the public finances, but the landowners seem to have a remarkable ability to influence the contents of the finance bill, and this is just another example. Again, I won't push it because the Minister has been most helpful in advising, and we've raised the issues, and I welcome what Senator O'Clarty said. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator, that's section 47, stand part bill. Is that agreed? Section 49, that's section 49, stand part bill. The section is opposed by Senator Riley.
Yeah,
Senator Cullinan.
O'Clarty.
O'Clarty, sorry, I'm just...
Must be the glasses that are confusing you.
Yeah, it must be the Galway air or something.
That's it, yeah. We both have that austere air about us, yeah. No, just it's interesting in the context of the previous section that was discussed there with Senator Barrett. That I suppose we feel that there's a certain lack of imagination in the finance bill this year, that the government has gone back to the old reliables once more of cigarettes and drink and petrol and... 49, sorry.
49.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
The excise, yeah. Yeah. And basically, we've just debated a section where you're looking at people with maybe a relatively higher wealth than the type of people who might be smoking cigarettes, etc. We would feel that this section really is very punitive on people from a lesser, maybe in general, socio-economic background. The stats would show that the majority of people who would smoke cigarettes would come from a lower socio-economic background, and that this really is taking money out of the pockets again of those end consumers. which is the opposite of what we want to be doing in this scenario. We want to be boosting the economy. We want people to be able to have more disposable income in their pockets. What this is doing is hammering lower income households once more and going back to the old reliables. Instead of using a little bit of imagination, I'd just say, for example, that even though I note that the Irish Cancer Society would suggest that we should be demanding that cigarette prices have increased, it must be pointed out that there is the option of going after the cigarette manufacturers for more tax as opposed to the actual consumers. But again, the government have chosen not to do that. So, you know, we just feel that in this section you've chosen to again implement kind of measures that hit people with less money in their pockets. This is going to be detrimental to the overall consumer spending in the economy and the knock-on effect that will have on the retail sector in those areas, etc. So on those grounds, that's why we're opposing this section.
Senator Mooney.
To say that while I understand where Senator Clougherty is coming from, there is another dimension to this, is the cost to the state of the outcome of people smoking and the cost to health and to the health budget. And all statistics show across the world that the only way to combat this smoking practice and leading to lung disease is by increasing the cost of tobacco. And I know that the government have a difficulty that down through the last number of years particularly, that people are illegally importing cigarettes from other parts of the world, and that the loss to the exchequer can be quite substantial. And there is an argument that if you keep putting it up, well, then people are going to go to the illegal outlets. But I have to say that I would fully support the government in terms of it increasing the excise duty. They're probably doing it, I'm not sure they're doing it for altruistic reasons, but in fairness to the government, I think all governments are aware of the health impact of smoking, and obviously there is some degree of thinking in terms of how much money you can put onto the packet of cigarettes. But quite frankly, the higher that it goes, the less likely that people are to start smoking, the less likely that they are to get diseases that are smoking related, and therefore the overall benefit both to society and to the exchequer is incalculable.
Minister.
Firstly, can I ask Cahirlock to confirm that Section 48 stands part of
Section 48, yes.
Yes, it's not part of the bill. I think Senator Barrett withdrew his opposition, but
sorry, it's Section 49 we're on. 49.
Yeah, for purposes of clarity, to make sure that 48 stands part of the bill. There may have been some doubt about that.
We called it.
Good. Just for purpose of clarity.
We did call it, yeah.
Thank you. Well, Cahirlock, this is an age-old issue of the question of excise on cigarettes. I often wonder when the Minister for Finance makes this proposal on budget day, is he doing it for the purpose of obtaining more money or for the purpose of saving the health of the country? Because I suppose there is a symbiotic relationship between the two. This section 49, Cahirlock, as you're aware, increases the rates of tobacco product tax, which, when VAT is included, amounts to 10 cent on a pack of 20, with a pro rata increase on the other tobacco products, together with an additional 50 cent on the 25 gram pack of roll your own tobacco, which I think we referred to yesterday at second stage. As a result of the budget increase, the price of a pack of 20 cigarettes in the most popular price category has increased to €9.90. The excise duty component of this price is €5.57, and the total tax inclusive of VAT is €7.31. Now, the excise duty component of this increase is 49 cent. This measure is expected to raise 25 million in a year. You know, I think it's been a long-standing policy objective on the part of the previous government and this government to use this as a means of obviously collecting more tax, but also to try to discourage people from smoking. And there is quite strong evidence that the more expensive this habit gets, the more people will try to break from it. That's notwithstanding the difficulties that there is within the economy concerning the illegal trade, importation and distribution of cigarettes. And we keep a very close eye on that, as do the revenue commissioners. concerning the very strong illegal activity that exists within the market. But this measure is as it is. No one likes imposing additional taxes on people, but in the circumstances, this manages to hit the objective of increasing revenue in this area, while at the same time achieving a very long-standing commitment on the part of previous governments and this government's to do what we can to encourage people not to smoke. So happily, on this argument, the Department of Finance and Revenue agree with the Department of Health.
And I take on board the points being made by both senators, but I do feel that the Minister himself has actually outlined really the rationale behind this. It's a money collecting exercise by the Department of Finance. I don't think it is for health reasons, because I think if this money was being collected for health reasons, it would be ring-fenced and put into a health budget that would support the organisations like the cancer societies, etc., in doing the work that they need to do to, obviously what we all want to do is reduce the number of people who are smoking and who are dying from cancer every year. So this really, I mean, the money from this is going straight back into the coffers of general government, obviously. It is a certain deterrent, but again, it's a very disproportionate deterrent in that it's going to hit those on lower incomes much more so. If somebody is smoking 20 cigarettes a week on a lower income as opposed to somebody on a higher income, the proportion of their income that is taken up by the increase in the duty on the cigarettes is obviously, it's going to impact more on people on a lower income. So this is a disproportionate tax which mirrors an awful lot of the other measures brought in the finance bill. It's going to hit people on lower incomes so much more. We all obviously want to see a decrease in the numbers of people smoking. We want to see a decrease in the amount of hospital bed days and hours that are used to treat people with cigarette smoking illnesses. But I think to try and wrap this up in the facade that it's out there, it's been done as a health measure, which in fairness you haven't done, Minister. You have said quite obviously that it is a revenue generating measure. But going back to the old reliables as opposed to going back to maybe looking at options like taxing the cigarette companies who are making huge profits. You could have easily found a measure, I believe, to collect 25 million from the companies as opposed to hitting the consumers who are already very hard hit.
Very briefly, Chair, when two policy objectives coincide, one being revenue raising and the other being a public health issue, that's a very happy coincidence, I would think. And I find Deputy Tahazzi's argument astonishing, because taken to its logical conclusion, we should be actually lowering the price of alcohol, or of cigarettes. I mean, it is an astonishing argument. It's a happy coincidence that we can raise revenue and achieve a public health objective as well. So, I mean, this is something very worth supporting. I'm very sorry.
Back to Senator Gilroy, it's obvious that...
Well, Senator, with all due respect, I don't think it is appropriate to have a back and forth between two senators, either address the Chair or address the Minister.
Through the Chair. Well, I just want to clarify then that really the reason we're not calling for a decrease, it certainly isn't what we would be saying, but what we're saying in this scenario is that to increase the duty on cigarettes as opposed to taking on board the possibility of taxing the company that's making massive profits is a very different thing. We're in a situation where people in the economy in general are not spending. They don't have as much disposable income. To increase the duty on cigarettes is going to reduce their disposable income, particularly for those on lower incomes. And I would call on the Minister then to therefore say, if it is a health measure, can he indicate whether the Department of Finance would consider ring-fencing the 25 million for spending on the health budget in the area of cancer services?
Tax goes into the large hole the tax goes into, and we pay for nurses out of it and teachers and everything else. Wearing the Department of Finance hat, not generally in favour of ring fencing, because in a circumstance where there's a billion deficit every single month, we have to keep all our options open. But I think the key argument here is that I think, as Senator Gilroy said, this is two objectives being met in the one decision. Now, the senator asks the question: should we not go off and tax these companies? This might well be an argument for, Capitol Hill, where the large tobacco plantations of North Carolina and South Carolina. I've been down the country of late around the nice fertile soil of East Cork. I haven't seen any tobacco plantations down there. And my understanding is there isn't a substantial manufacturing. Is there any manufacturing left in the country at all? So unless he's proposing some kind of extrajudicial form of taxation that Ireland is going to impose on the tobacco plantations of the Carolinas, I'm not sure that we're going to achieve that. But we have to be honest about this. This is an unfortunate reality for people who smoke, but it also sends a very clear message out to people that smoking injures your health, and you should do your best to desist from that on the basis that, because the enormous amount of money that the state has to pump into the Irish healthcare system on an annualised basis because of the damages and the dangers caused by smoking.
I welcome the Minister's reply and his interesting lesson on the tobacco industry and the manufacturing companies. I was very aware that we don't have many of them here. We have a lot of them in Canada as well, as I saw when I was over there recently. But I do note that you have a huge team of advisors with you. I think it was about 16 at last count in the ante-room. And I'm sure that there is a mechanism that could be found to tax a company that is making huge profits in this state on the sale of cigarettes. I think certainly it is something worth looking at, and I think you should possibly come back to us on that.
These matters are kept under constant review.
Absolutely, and at the same time the consumers and lower income suffer.
Subject to those very stringent observations, can we take it as Section 49 stands part of the bill? Agreed.
Not agreed.
Not agreed. Question is that Section 49 stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those in favour say aye. Those against say nay. I think the question is carried.
No.
Section 50. The question is Section 50 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed? Agreed. Section 51, recommendation number 29, in the name of Senator Darragh O'Brien, 29, 30 and 31 are related and may be discussed together by agreement. Is that agreed? Senator McSharry.
Yeah, thanks very much. Minister, this is in relation to the rebate scheme that many of us have been calling for many years in the House, from both sides indeed, and it's good to see that some progress is made in that. Naturally, we don't feel it goes far enough. In particular, first of all, on the licensing end of it and who is permitted. As the Minister will be aware, the agri-food sector has an exemption to the road transport licensing provisions for operators transporting food, produce for primary manufacturing. So they don't need to hold a road haulage licence. But the fact that they don't hold a road haulage licence will not make them eligible to benefit from this scheme. And I think